Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a topic that might just flip the script on how you think about learning, play, and even brain development itself. We are diving into the really powerful and honestly often overlooked connection between how a child moves and how a child thinks.
So let's start with a big question right off the bat. What if all that running around, all that jumping, all that focus on building with blocks, what if it's more than just kids being kids? What if it's actually one of the most critical ingredients for building a sharper, more capable mind?
You know, for the longest time, we've kind of put thinking and doing in two totally separate boxes, right? You've got your quiet classroom time, and then you've got your loud playground time. But what if that entire way of thinking is just wrong? The science is pointing to a much more fascinating story, all about a hidden connection.
Okay, so here's the main idea we're going to unpack. Developing motor skills, it's not just about building strong bodies. Not at all. It turns out, every single time a child learns to control their movement, they're also building and reinforcing the very neural pathways they need for thinking. It's not two different things. It's really just two sides of the same coin. Now, to really wrap our heads around this link, we need to get a little more specific about what motor skills even means. And broadly speaking, they fall into two key categories that, frankly, we all use every single day.
So on one side, you have your fine motor skills, the delicate, super precise movements. Just think about the intense focus it takes for a little kid to hold a crayon the right way, or stack a tiny block, or just try to button up a coat. Then, on the other side, you've got the gross motor skills. These are the big, powerful movements that let us explore the world, like running across a park, jumping clear over a puddle, or balancing on a curb. Both are absolutely crucial.
And look, this isn't just a nice-sounding theory. It's a conclusion that's backed by decades and decades of real scientific research. So let's actually take a look at what the evidence shows us.
So what does this connection look like in the real world? Well, what we see in study after study is a really direct link. Kids who have better physical coordination also tend to be better at a whole range of mental tasks, especially when it comes to things like solving problems and, importantly, remembering what they've learned.
And we're not just talking about a coincidence here. Nope. Experts like neurologist Dr. Thomas H. Benton argue that this is a causal relationship. The very act of practicing and refining these motor skills seems to light up and strengthen the exact same parts of the brain that are responsible for higher-level thinking. It's literally a neurological work.
And the connection, it gets even more precise. It's not just about any movement in general. The evidence shows that as a child starts to master more complex and more refined physical skills, we see a parallel leap in their cognitive abilities.
It's pretty amazing. So what are these advanced functions we're talking about? Well, the work of developmental psychologist Dr. Nancy Bailey gives us a fantastic answer. She found that mastering these complex movements is directly tied to a stronger attention span and a better working memory. And that's so important. That's the mental sticky note we all use to juggle information in our heads. And this study right here just illustrates the point perfectly with hard data. A study out of the University of Illinois wasn't just observing, they actually intervened. They took a group of kids, put them in structured motor programs, and the results? They were so clear. They saw significant boosts in attention, in memory, and in the ability to plan ahead. The physical activity was directly making their minds work better.
Okay, so we've seen the what. We see that movement and thinking are linked. But how? How does this actually happen inside the brain? Well, the answer lies in this incredible, almost magical adaptability of the human brain. The magic word here, the key to all of this, is neuroplasticity. And all this really is the brain's fundamental ability to change and literally rewire itself based on experience. Just like lifting weights makes a muscle stronger, engaging in these motor activities makes these neural pathways stronger. It truly is exercise for the brain.
And neuroscientist Dr. Michael Merzenich just nails it with this quote. Motor exercise has this amazing dual benefit. Yeah, I'm sure it builds muscles. We all know that. But what's more important is that it directly stimulates the cognitive centers of the brain. That stimulation is what forges stronger connections, and that's what leads to better learning.
All right, so we have the evidence and we have the how, the mechanism. But let's bring it all together. What does this actually mean for a child's future? Let's connect the dots from simple, everyday playtime to their long-term potential.
This whole thing really comes down to strengthening a set of skills we call executive functions. The best way to think about these is like the brain's air traffic control system. They include things like inhibitory control, that's the power to think before you act, working memory, which we've talked about, and cognitive flexibility, which is the ability to adapt when the rules change. These are the absolute bedrock skills for success, not just in school, but in life.
And that brings us to the big takeaway here. For parents, for educators, understanding this link is a complete game changer. It means that weaving physical activity into a child's day isn't just about letting off steam or taking a break from learning. It is a fundamental part of the learning process itself. It's a direct strategy for building a more focused, more flexible, and more resilient mind.
And that leaves us with one last, really powerful question to chew on. When we truly understand that movement is building the very architecture of the brain that's used for learning, we have to ask ourselves, is the playground just as important as the classroom? And based on all this evidence, the answer seems to be a resounding yes.